Maria, great to see you. Thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat with me. I know you're super busy, so I always appreciate it when people make a bit of time to talk about what they're doing. So thank you for that. I want to start the interview by reflecting back to you something that you said to me that I thought was fascinating, actually, and very timely, actually. You said AI means that your business model is going to have to change. Now, that's quite a bold statement. I mean, a lot of people will be thinking my business model doesn't need to change, but you're saying that people's business models do need to change. Why are you saying that, and why should people pay attention?
Hmm. Great question, and thank you for the tee up. And thank you, by the way, Paul, for inviting me to this series. It's an honor and a pleasure to do this. I said that because of the rate of AI's progress and
Mm.
evolution.
Yeah.
It's just too much for the human brain to accommodate even now. So the way we think, you can even boil it down to that, has to change, right? So it's not only business model, it requires fundamentally how we think about things to change. Otherwise, we're going to be caught in the rapture of AI, and that yields a not so desirable scenario because then that means we don't think as much. We lose the agency over any algorithm that is working alongside us in terms of AI. And then before you know it, we really don't know. We can't tell what's AI and what's not, what's good and what's not. And that's sort of the decline of the human race. And so
Yeah.
whether it's the business or the individual, I feel very strongly that we start now to think differently with AI.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, as you were talking, I was thinking, I think it was Einstein said, you can't solve tomorrow's problems with yesterday's thinking.
Mm.
I mean, there's some kind of famous quote about that, and that's essentially what you're saying, isn't it? Is that we need to think differently about the future because it's going to
Yep.
be very different from the past.
Hmm.
I think that's a very well made point, actually. Let me ask you about how, I mean, you can talk about what your business is doing in a second, but what set you on this path? I mean, how did you kind of end up going down the road that you're getting onto the road that you're on? And I mean, what was it that set you on the path that you're on?
Again, it boils down to where I see AI going. I've been a practitioner for a long time, and admittedly, from today's standards, can't really, go side by side with AI and really, do the programming that I used to do. We don't have to do it anymore, luckily. And so you start noticing what's really left as to what we can do. And it's all about, the critical thinking and the judgment and the creativity in
Mm.
terms of, drawing from our experience from the past, which our kids from today don't really have. And so when you look at the born in the cloud or born in AI startups, they might not have the wherewithals to look back and say, okay, this is how we did things and this is how we evolved, not have the experience to learn from the past mistakes, whereas we do. And so I think there's in creating SMEmojo, where it is an ecosystem, it's a moldable ecosystem, it's a self-directed ecosystem. It's all about how do you build out your own network, right? So that you don't lose agency over your own fate, right? So for the business, whether it's a small business or a startup, it's all about creating your own network so that you're not forced to just have the hand-me-downs from the larger enterprises, the roadmap from the larger enterprises,
Mm.
right? Those are not meant to be for you. So you're a small business, you still have to have agency over your objectives. If you say, I want to earn this much over time, you need something, you need an ecosystem that you can drive so that you can get there. The startups who are so easily now blinded by AI, sorry to say that, but it's true. They can learn how to code, they can learn to vibe code even, and they'll create something. So we're entering an era where a lot more entrepreneurial than before. AI calls us to be that. And then, you forget and you get swallowed by, again, the rapture of the progress of AI because it's so cool. You can create something in a day. And how do you then not lose yourself in that? Right. And then from the human perspective, where we just now launched the Human Edge Academy, we are training new graduates and so on as to how they can really think and have better judgment as AI gets better and better, because we don't want them losing hope, for one thing, but also losing creativity and so on, and just believing what's there. So it's teaching the critical thinking, it's teaching the better judgment, and at the same time, it's actually feeding AI with better and better quality data, because no matter what one says, we're still feeding AI data. And so, what better action to do than get in front of it and train the people who are then gonna be feeding AI the data, right? So it kind of comes full circle. But why we did this, or why I chose where we want to go, it's because of the progress that AI is demonstrating, and there's no stopping it,
Not
and
going to go
we
away, is
have
it?
to change.
Let me ask
We
you,
have
you
to change.
mentioned SME Mojo. I mean, just for the people that are listening, just explain very briefly what that is.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. So SMEmojo is, you can see it, in, you could call it an ecosystem, but it's a moldable ecosystem. There are four players in that ecosystem: the startup, the SME that hardly anyone pays attention to, and the investor, because now they can look into that ecosystem and point at the ones that they might be interested in. And then there's the expert advisors, which are like your fractional CXOs that these small businesses
Right.
can't afford. So they're all in there, and they're all, looking at each other. The SMEs and the startups get to wield their own fate. They declare a goal, a 2-year goal. And then there's a recommender engine supporting that ecosystem, so that depending on how well they score, and I'll get to the scoring part, a certain part of the network in that ecosystem will light up and allow them to connect to, so that they can get to their goals faster. Now, what is that scoring? We are essentially testing for resilience, investability, and culture. So when you put those together, we call it the RIC score. And it's not like a credit score, but it is like a credit score. It's used by investors, it's used by suppliers, it's used by even, amongst the SMEs themselves if they want to partner with each other. The whole point is to enable the SME and the startup to have to optimize their own path, so that they are getting to their goals faster and better.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Okay. And,
just a
and
little bit.
and you also mentioned the Human Edge Academy, which we've spoken about separately, which I think is also quite just for again for the people that are listening. I mean, just explain what that is and why you're doing that. I mean, I know it's kind of part of the SME Mojo thing, but just talk about that specifically, and then we'll talk about some other stuff in a second.
Okay, yeah. So it kind of started with a selfish reason. It's all for SMEmojo. It's all for that ecosystem. So I mentioned that we have these expert advisors, right? These expert advisors get paid. It's not enough, or it's not enough to have as their full-time job. They get paid a good sum of money. So when we go and score an emerging market, where when what they're calling SME is really MSME, the micros and so on. Now all of a sudden, those expert advisors become unaffordable. So we needed to have a different track that would still give us the RIC score without the use of the expert advisors.
Yeah.
And so we came up with an academy that will train ground truth validators. So those are essentially, if you could look back in the day, probably what we used to call mechanical Turks. So in order to verify something, you'll have a number of people in a certain location go and verify it, corroborate the story that yes, so and so is actually Paul Essery, right? Um, so take that. to scale now in terms of the AI era, you still need to evaluate businesses. You still need to validate, whether the mom and pop who's aspiring to now go global and export things, whether they have a good resilience when it comes to, supply chain disruption, logistics disruption, like what we're having these days.
Mm.
So those ground truth validators who are graduating from the academy, little by little, can practice more and more complex data collection. But here's the kicker: they're not they're not just learning; they're actually earning while they're
Yeah,
learning.
yeah, which I think is, I mean, when
So
you talked about that, I'm
yeah,
thinking that's a really beautiful idea. When well done
and
on
it's important, I think, in today's the newer generation who are coming up with no experience or little experience in terms of
yeah,
corporate world and so on. It gives them hope. And it's learning theory 101, which is, if you want someone to learn something real quick, the action and the reward have to have very little latency in between them.
yeah,
So you can't wait. It's no longer the model where you're sending someone to, a 4-year college program to get their bachelor's and so on, and then they look for a job. No, it's they can start as a sideline, go chapter by chapter,
yeah,
and after maybe chapter 3 or module 3, they start earning money. So they get to see right away how much they can earn given what they graduate from,
yeah, yeah. No,
right?
I mean, I think it's a brilliant idea. I mean, we've got a lot of problems. We were just talking about this. We've got a lot of problems in the UK with young people that are struggling to get those kind of experiences.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah,
It's
it's a great.
everywhere.
Let me ask you about, to come back to SME Mojo. I mean, how are you defining success then? I mean, I mean, ecosystems are kind of complicated, aren't they? I mean, how are you going to define success for SME Mojo?
Oh, success it's easy, actually. It's for every goal that an SME declares, right? Because there's a recommender engine and there's an optimization, a bunch of algorithms that are supporting that network. Success is how far along did they get towards that goal. And if they said they want to make $1 million in a year, right? Even at every month, every end of month, you can get a programmatic sort of summary as to how much closer they are to their goal. So it's very easy to measure. Now, that's still quite laboratoric, right? The touchy-feely, but also close to my heart, success is Force Me Mojo overall. I think it actually will boil down to giving everyone agency. And I suspect actually that it's the Human Edge Academy that's gonna be quite a legacy
Yeah, and we've
for
talked in the past
Mojo.
about the importance of agency, haven't we? I mean, really, really important thing to help people develop. And where do you see the business in 5 years' time? I mean, you're relatively early on the journey at the moment, I think, aren't you? I mean, where do you see it, let's say 5 years' time? I mean, how do you see it unfold?
5 years, well, 5 years time, we'll probably be able to exercise our or to flex our sort of data provider muscle.
Right.
Um, and so you could say it's less exciting, but it depends on how you're going to use that data, right? So it's better data quality and so on, because we anticipate having scored millions of businesses by that time. Yes, we can now start talking like we are Dun and Bradstreet, my alma mater, and have better and deeper things to say about a small business, right? So anywhere in the world. So that in itself is rewarding. But when it comes to enabling the newer generation or the next generation of uh, of workers, it's complete economic empowerment
Yeah. And
in
it's also,
multiple countries.
I mean, I don't know what it's like in Singapore where you are, but here, I mean, we've got we've got governments, not just the current government, but governments historically have not been very good at supporting small businesses. I mean, they're great at talking to big businesses, but they don't, I mean, we don't really have a great set of policies to support the
Mm.
growth of small businesses. And it's because they don't have data about what helps them. And you're going to solve that potentially, aren't you?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So right away we declared ourselves global, and we are working on really, really substantial partnerships all over the world. We've got a couple working on that we're working on in Latin America. There's a
Mm.
few here in APAC, of course, where we are. The US and Europe. There's a couple in Central Asia and Central Europe. Very much open to more partnerships because the sooner we do this, the I think the more fruitful the initiatives will be for everybody.
Let me ask you about being an entrepreneur. I mean, I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they pretty much all say to me that building a business is like riding a roller coaster. You know, when you have good days, days that aren't so good. You know, it's both physically exhausting and it's emotionally tough. I mean, it's quite hard, you know, when things don't work out the way you want them to, and so on. What is it about this that, if you like, gets you out of bed every morning to ride that roller coaster? I mean, what is it that motivates you about this particular project or this particular business?
Oh boy. I think it's really about the excitement in the AI arena. Listen, I mean, I grew up being hands-on, and I've led big teams, all sorts of sizes of teams. I've been in the corporate world, and I would always go back to being an entrepreneur. So it's something that I also had to acknowledge that you know what, I actually have an entrepreneurial gene. So
Yeah.
first thing is don't deny it.
Yeah.
But you're gonna start having more and more of a stomach for it. That definitely you gotta crawl before you run. There are a lot of sacrifices, but it's also, it's I think in order to progress, given for humanity, given where we are in the technology and the state of the corporate world and so on, and the career that everyone can have, something really needs to change. So it's all about the change and wanting to be that change agent. It's not it's not egotistical. I don't think it's actually more, giving yourself. But it's also very important to have close friends and loved ones who are, I would say, supportive. So I'm very thankful to have those. And support doesn't mean, it's financial and everything like that. It's really more, hey, you know what? Can you just tell me if I am needing to be reeled back in? Because
Yeah.
I'm like, I get so enamored with building, building, building because I used to be hands-on. And so that gene is also there. So it's good to have a network that tells you
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
a break, test it and market, see if anyone bites, and if you're on the right path
And
and
those
so
and
on.
those feedback loops are really important for entrepreneurs. I mean, and that's part of what makes entrepreneurship interesting, is because you're constantly dealing with feedback, which means you're constantly adapting and evolving the business depending on what
Yeah,
the feedback is. Let me
yeah.
ask you about your values. To what extent have your values shaped the way you've built the business?
I think I'm a problem solver and I'm a fixer. And and then the third quality is that I'm a protector. And so where that protector manifests, if I have a large team, I'll be all over protecting the team and so on, making sure I've got their back. When I don't have a large team, it all goes to what I'm trying to build and what I'm trying to do, making sure that there's a good enough amount of people that are protected through time, through whatever existential I wouldn't say dilemma, but existential period that we're going through in terms of transformation. So, and there couldn't be a better test to it than this AI thing that just keeps
Mm.
getting better and better in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? And what sort of decisions keep you up at night?
Hmm.
Do you have stuff that you really worry about?
Oh boy. Yes. I would say there's at least a couple of those, but you know, again, for someone who grew up building simulations and algorithms, then there's the real world. And one thing that keeps me up at night is, it's the different political and geopolitical levers that are moving or constantly
Especially at
moving,
the
right?
moment. Especially.
Yes. And so, you're afraid to sleep because when you wake up, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a different ball game. I need to change everything or change sorts and such parameters. But if you look at, again, going back to the scenario models that are supporting the recommender engine in SMEmojo, I have to keep watching as to what's going on in the world to make sure that, when the small business who is who has declared their goal, but all of a sudden, if their graph hasn't been updated, and yet all these crazy things are happening in the world, it can be very misleading to them. They
Mm.
might be seeing an easier path than it really should be. So keeps me up at night because I feel like I have a responsibility,
Mm.
or Smimojo has a responsibility to make sure that those algorithms are always up to snuff in terms of the levers that we can actually tweak, right? Depending on what happens.
Yeah. And as you've been building the business, have there been any surprises that have kind of popped up where you thought, oh, didn't quite expect that to go that way? I mean, have you had any sort of surprises on the journey?
Mhm. If I have to admit, and yeah, everyone knew this, of course, um, in the beginning, the nerdy side of me said, "Hey, I have a score. It's called the Rick score. It's so great. It measures
Yeah.
resilience, investability, and culture. No one else has done it before. Blah blah blah. No one wanted to get scored." So I kind of forgot that, there's a stigma in quote unquote getting scored. So I was surprised for the latter part of last year, but that's also when we pivoted. So I do listen still
Hmm.
to feedback.
Yeah, and I mean, it's odd, isn't it, when you're so focused on something and you think it's a great thing, and then not everyone does. I mean, it's always a bit. So I
Yep.
totally understand that. And let me ask you about, as the CEO. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about being a CEO is that that's the person that has to keep the business moving forward. So how do you, as the CEO, I mean, what's your take on how you keep everyone on the front foot, keep them moving? Because there's so much change at the moment. I mean, how do you keep people on the front foot?
I think you have to have a big vision. And I've always been known to put big vision or North Star, right? So that's very important. Again, things are moving so fast right now. We
Yeah,
are in the year of the horse, where it's all about energy and fire, and you go and gallop and get to wherever. Just act quickly. If you don't have North Star, you're gonna end up somewhere really, really far and obscure at the end of this year, going into next year. So having that North Star, and reinforcing that with everyone on deck is important. You could say also having a doctrine or some sort of a doctrine, right? Because it's yes, it's important to have a North Star, but if everyone doesn't know what their purpose is
yeah,
towards that North Star, they're going to step on each other's shoes. There's going to be infighting and all that stuff. And we have absolutely no patience and no time for that
yeah,
this year.
yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you about the people bit, if you like. I mean, there's a couple of interesting questions. I mean, that are going through my mind. One is how do you get the right people on the bus, if you like, because it's quite a different proposition. So one is how do you bring people on board, and then the kind of the question that follows from that is okay. Well, once you've got them on board, how do you create an environment in which they can thrive and do So just explore those two things. How do you get the right people on the bus, and how do you help them thrive?
Mhm. So, funnily enough, Paul, those kinds of questions are actually part of the workbook in our
Right.
assessment of a business. So, we do
Right.
have to excel in it in order to,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
to score it. So again, I go back to agency. They have to feel that because they have to thrive whether they're working for SMEmojo or not, right? So it's teaching them that look, there's enough levers, there's as many levers in this for you to explore, right? And actually find something that you love, but you have to love it. And so giving them a space where they can actually build out, the progression, the strategy and progression as to how they're going to take something from here to that North Star. Even if it's a localized goal, it still has to connect to that North Star. And it should not be stepping on, the next employee's track and so on. Or it could be there's certain intersections that can be had. Luckily, I mean, since we have recommender engines for businesses to strategize, we can also gamify this a bit. So, I love it when the team is competitive. I think it's one way. There's healthy competitions that you can do so that they are, kind of watching each other at the corner of their eyes, seeing how everyone is progressing. Because you do still need to reach the North Star. So if
Yeah.
someone is falling behind, who's where in the doctrine does it say so and so has to save that someone, right? So there's no one left behind per se because there's a greater goal for everyone to move towards.
Yeah. And you mentioned gamification. I mean, just tell us a little bit about that.
You have to, in this day, give everyone the space to be entrepreneurial. That's the only way they're going to be loyal to the company. So in essence, it's turning the company model upside down, right? No longer is it about the company. You're doing everything for the company. Yes, there's still a North Star. And actually, that's why it becomes very important. Because while you're enabling everyone to be entrepreneurial and say, oh, look at what I invented, you're actually enabling them to say, I can do this. But so the thing that you're preventing is when someone is so unhappy at work because you're micromanaging them and saying this is what you have to do, this is how you have to move, and so on, and they get confused and start not thinking for themselves. Because then you have to keep watching that person, right? And at the end of the day, they'll be so dissatisfied and when it clicks, like when you ride a bike and say, okay, this is easy, then the next thought is like, why am I here when I can do 80% of my job and make money for myself?
Mm.
What am I doing here? I don't need to be here. I'll just do my thing on my own. So that's the waste that you don't want happening. And so,
Yeah.
getting everyone to appreciate how they can be independent thinkers, how they can have agency over what they're building and, owning their own franchise kind of thing. It's more and more important in today's environment.
And just to pick up a couple of points you made there, I mean, you talked about agency, we've talked about that in the past, and you talked about people being able to, take control of their own situation, and that those are good things. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But again, rather like we were talking earlier on, I mean, doing that exposes you to the roller coaster, doesn't it? I mean, in the sense that that's difficult for people because it doesn't always work out. Things don't always go to plan. So agency is a good thing, but it also makes life harder. I mean, how do you build? I guess my question is, how do you build resilience into how you build people so that they can cope with that as much as you can cope with that?
You mean resilience in the employees as opposed to
Well, both actually.
okay. So for the business, it is all about that North Star. It's about the big vision. It's about the doctrine, making sure that
Mm,
everyone understands their role. But within that role, they still are free to go and take care of their own enterprise. And so you arrive at this idea of a swarm, right? So a swarm technology where everyone acts a certain way and but at the end of the day when you step back it's a beautiful orchestration of everyone still owning their own franchise but it's not chaos. right? So I borrow a lot from that, and that's why also everything that we're doing is supported by knowledge graph, because knowledge graph is exactly that. It's the contextual learning of things, but not to get nerdy and so on. So building resilience for the company is about having that big vision or North Star, building resilience within the employee. If they're getting frustrated that they're not getting to where they want to be, there is always a plan B, a plan C, and so on
Right.
that they can go to. So it's also important for them, again, going back to the doctrine, to know sort of their exit strategies, right? So, in essence, what this is saying is it, it, it should not, no one should wait until they have to go, they feel like they have to go to HR, which nowadays is all AI assistant driven
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
right? But it's like it's an open environment to a certain extent. But yeah, it's knowing your ways out, your ways to a plan B, to a plan C, and so on. Raising your hand when when you've taken on something that you find out maybe in step two or three that you don't have the energy for, right?
It seems, the thing that was behind my question was that it seems to me there's a link between helping people build their agency and then and building resilience in them. It seems to me those two
Oh,
things are
absolutely.
overlapping.
It's yeah, it's I call it, they're two yeah, edges of the same sword.
Yeah. Let me ask you about, I mean, your business was, if you like, born global. I mean, doing business in Singapore is very different from doing business in London, very different from doing business in LA. I mean, how do you take account of those kind of cultural nuances? Because you're in so many different worlds, if you like. I mean, what's your take on that?
So I hope this is not going to be controversial. It's actually one of the things I ignore the most.
Oh, really? Right. Okay, just explain that then. Just why?
Because when you look at the human nature and the human psychology, we are all the same. So, and it's all about that. I think, running a global business, yes, there's definitely cultural barriers to think about and so on, but most of those are language. If I were to go to a country that has a different religion altogether, different beliefs, yes, of course, we will tweak what they will see in the ecosystem. Employing someone there, the ground truth validators will be trained differently. Their workbook or their chapters, their modules in the course will be slightly different, but at the same, fundamentally, it's all about what's so human about all of us when we're trying to assess truth, when we're trying to have good judgment. Like, how do you teach good judgment and critical thinking, right? There's not much wiggle room, actually, which is you asked me earlier what surprised me the most. While this is not a surprise, it's still kind of, it was a nice thing to observe and kind of validate my initial belief, which is human mind, very, very much pliable and predictable.
Mm. Well, psychologists would say that, wouldn't they? I mean, there's a lot of evidence to support that, I think. And what about the critical moments that shaped you as the CEO? I mean, when you look back on the journey, I mean, have there been particular moments that where you've reflected and perhaps changed tack as a result? I mean, have there been critical moments for your development as a CEO?
Yep, yep, absolutely, all the time. And it's almost a discipline to insert that in the last 5 minutes of your day. As I'm giving thanks for all the things that have happened to me and to the business and my relationships and so on. It's also like, okay, so what didn't go so well, right?
Mm.
I am actually not a believer of journaling. I think reflecting at the end of the day is enough. But at the same time, it's things like, well, gee, I spent this much effort on this, and it led me somewhere else completely different,
Mm,
right? So do I accept it, or is it an error? And if I accept it, take it a couple more notches in terms of the quote unquote simulation as to where it might go. And then also accepting that not everything you can plan for.
mm.
For someone who's so enamored by simulations and things, because they're just so powerful nowadays, more powerful than when you and I were in school or, practicing
Definitely
in
when I was
large companies.
more powerful than I am. Well, that's for certain.
um, but yeah, so even to someone um, who loves simulation algorithms, you always have to remember that you will not have control over everything, and then you have to learn to laugh at yourself. And so learning to laugh at yourself means you are also you feel accountable for the decisions that you're making on a daily basis. And then again, checking on your North Star. So while the business has its North Star, your relationship, who you are as a person, should also uh, be quite, I should say, aspirational in terms of where you want to go, because we're all growing no matter how old we get, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I can definitely speak to that. Let me ask you, what is it that I mean, whenever we've spoken, you come across with, you have huge amounts of enthusiasm. What is it that you've enjoyed the most about building SME Mojo?
I think the way it helps people and businesses. And so it's a combination of that, and that, it still gets me to be as nerdy as possible while really it's not so much the business. I'm sorry to say this, and I probably will regret saying this, but it's not so much the business. I'm not that kind of CEO. It's really more, how much impact is this business
Mm.
having at the end of the day? Now, don't get me wrong. We still need to be profitable and things. So while that's there, it's a secondary, if not tertiary, in terms of a goal. It's really more how many do we help?
Yeah, yeah, and that's very fulfilling, isn't it? I mean, it gives you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
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 And let me ask you about if you were, let's say you were to go back to, if you were starting from scratch, is there anything you'd do differently, knowing what you know now?
Hmm. Um, I would probably talk to more people about it. And
Because what and why do you say that?
Because I think we would have progressed a lot faster. Now it's grown, right? It's got the Human Edge Academy. That's part of it. It's got the ecosystem. Before the ecosystem was self-directed, it did not have a recommender engine. So it's evolving, and it's good. While it's good to invent all these things, uh, there's the calculated risk of, maybe someone more able or more capable running away with your ideas, and then you're
Right.
left behind, right? So I think looking back, it's less and less of that. It still benefits everyone in the business, in this Mimojo ecosystem even, that I open up and talk about it more, even though I don't have maybe 60% of it fleshed out, right? So it's that I'm sure you've heard this before, where you're like inventing, you're just thinking about it, and it's like, oh, it's never ready, it's not ready yet, and blah blah
Mm.
blah. And so you sacrifice, talking to two experts that you might have encountered, but it's like, no, 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 it's not ready for it, and so on, so on. So
No, I understand.
just talk about it. It's good.
Yeah, because you get feedback and you get other people's thoughts, which will trigger new
Yeah.
thoughts. Certainly, yeah. And if you were to offer one piece of advice to a rookie CEO, somebody starting out on a journey a bit like yours, I mean, what would that one piece of advice be?
Calm down.
Calm down.
Use the have that last 5 minutes
Right.
to take a deep breath and reflect on your day. It's very important, and again, it's being a bit forgiving. Uh, that you're gonna make trials and errors, and so it's good to be calm because I believe that if you're calm and at that last 5 minutes of your day and you're recounting everything that you've done as to how it has moved you forward towards your goal, um, you get to pivot and you get to be more nimble when you have a good head on your shoulders.
Yeah, yeah. And I think your point about making time to reflect is actually really important. I mean, because what you're
Yeah.
actually saying is you're making time to think about what you're doing. That's what reflecting
Yes.
is, isn't it? And thinking about what you're doing is probably a good thing, it seems to me. So I
Yeah.
certainly think that's a
Yeah.
great piece of advice. One last thing. We've talked a lot about the things that you've done. We've been looking back over things. What is it that most excites you about the next leg of the journey? I know you've got lots of sort of things on the go. What is it that excites you most about where you're going?
I hate to say it. I kind of mentioned it in other things, but or other interviews, but I feel really that this one is for the tombstone. It's
What do you mean by
it's
that?
yeah, no, I'm not dying anytime soon.
Oh, that's
But
good.
no, it's something that yeah, I feel like what we're doing at SMEmojo really, really helps businesses out there, just small businesses. And now with the Human Edge Academy, again, the new generation of workers and what to do with this AI thing. AI excites me quite a lot.
Yeah.
And so this is one that uh, keeps me sort of abreast and side by side by it. So because, how do you help someone who gets in the on the Spimojo platform if you don't know what's happening with AI, right? That's the whole premise of it is to make sure that they can straddle both worlds for now, the pre-AI and the all AI or singularity. And so I think, yeah, in the future, I would love to look back and say, you know what, we did this right in terms of this journey towards singularity with AI, and that wrong, but we were able to pivot because we did all these other things right and so on. So,
I mean, it's interesting to hear you say that. I think whichever way AI shakes down, it's going to be an interesting few years, and I can totally see why you're excited by it. It's going to be very interesting. Maria, thank you for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. Always appreciate that. A really good, I mean, what a great proposition you've developed. I mean, I love it. I think it's really, really fascinating. So
thank you.
thank you for sharing that, and as always, good luck going forwards.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Paul. I look forward to speaking with you again on other things and so on. But it's
Likewise,
been a pleasure.
likewise.
All right.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.